And I be the black man time. Fuck if you trust this. We gonna feel the positive vibe. Oh, we gon' bust quick. How do you feel? Yes, live. Young black people need to learn who you are and understand why your light skin, brown and dark. And always know where the sun get the heat to stay hot. Stand firm in your square and you never will stop. Rock out with your cock out and never drop out. You be the master of the
Let's get it going. So peace, everybody. This is your brother, man, Minister Freedom Allah. Tuning in live from the great city, man, of D Mecca. Tuning in from the internet world, from cyberspace, man, and we got a great topic. I got a few other guests coming in. We got IC Allah coming in. We got my man Empower coming in. But most notably, man, right up front, I got our great brothers, the God, divine ruler, equality in the building. Peace, God. Thank you for coming in. It's definitely a pleasure having you, man, and having you on this platform with me to build and add on, and what we do best, which is build and add on, God. So today's subject, I think is gonna be really dope, really powerful, because we want to. I know everybody's of course talking about the whole Lord Jamar thing from last night, and the whole experience from it. The whole flat Earth thing. So what we want to talk about, man, because honestly, God, and anybody who's seen the whole episode last night, the whole thing of Lord Jamar, they know that I was never given an opportunity to speak at all, which from what I noticed is what a lot of the people from the so-called flat Earth community do. They, as opposed to giving you an opportunity to speak and to say something and to even have these conversations at all, man. They just resort to talking over you and yelling and not letting you get a point across, and it was very little actual intellectual conversation at all, God. So what I think is important and what is always powerful, especially when we have our own platforms, when we have our own spaces that we can come into, that we could dialogue, that we could talk, that we build on these things in our own time. You know what I mean? I don't think that having these conversations will be able to debunk some of this simple, basic science. This is something that we can not only do in our own spaces, but have this conversation ourselves, man. So, God, I wanted to invite you because, and God, I'm gonna toot your horn a little bit, man. I've always been told on platform, how sharp and how wise you are, especially in the realm of physics, of science. I've seen other videos of yours, showing, improving, and building and adding on to sciences like the circumference of the planet Earth, how we show and prove that, and how we build on that. So, I know I thought, as well as a few other gods, hit me and was like, "Yo, God, the God that you gotta have to add on to that is our great brother, the great brother, divine and ruler equality, man, because the God is definitely adept in that science and what we build on, man. So, God, really quick, if you can, man, can you introduce yourself? If you don't mind telling the good folks, where you from, who you are, and what you specialize in. I know I'm sitting here talking about you, but I would love to have you, if you can, expound on your own own history and who you are, God, if you don't mind. Come on to the stage.
All right. Peace. Thank you.
Peace, God.
Minister Freedom. Yes, my name is Divine Ruler Equality Allah. I rest in Allah's Garden, which is Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. I've been living here for approximately 12 years. I've been in the nation since 1991. So my credentials in terms of physical science, I have a master's in physics from Purdue University, from West Lafayette, Indiana. And I've taken my physics roles and I've since matriculated into information technology and high performance computing. So that's sort of my professional background. Uh, my interest in physics started even before I got supreme knowledge itself, from my dad having us watch stuff like Cosmos with Carl Sagan and those kind of shows on PBS that sort of get you interested, not just in what they call science fiction or science fantasy, but also science fact, and how does the universe relate to where you live, and how does it shape and mold the things that you may take for granted, like how is weather produced, which also governs how and when you can grow food and gather food, or build buildings, or make materials into clothes, those sort of things. So that's just a short intro of my background piece.
Peace, God. Peace, God. Thank you, God. And one of my guests just came up in here, man. I got the great God Empower in the building. Just came to add on, man, and say he's hanging. My good brother's hanging in here with me, co-hosting the building. God, you want to introduce yourself, man? You want to come on the stage, man? It's our first time having you on the God and Earth cast, man. Come on through.
Peace. My name is Empower Allah. Peace, divine ruler equality. Good to see you.
Yeah, peace. It's been a while.
Oh yeah, indeed. Man. It's always a pleasure. I'm here from D-Mecca, Detroit, Michigan. I've had knowledge of self since December 29, 2005. I'm a proud graduate of Michigan State University, and currently I'm an electrician. And I was already headed over here for this event. However, I would say that with what has happened with Lord Jamar, I've met the guy before in the Root, which is our Mecca, Harlem. That weren't along this subject, and this was something that, and I'm sure I'm probably not the only one that could attest to that, but when he's among the true and living gods, have the square, when he stepped into that realm and Minister Freedom was there, those types of things are going to happen as far as having the show improve. But brothers such as Divine Ruler Equality and a lot, this stuff isn't new. No, and with the knowledge that we have that stems back from the Adept Chambers, the knowledge that he is, well, I should say the trick knowledge that he is trying to parade as knowledge, we have heard before and know how to move beyond that.
That's right.
That's something that exists outside of the reality. So if we take a closer look at reality and certain things that we will, I'm sure, going to discuss, it will be something that you don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to, go into a laboratory to see for yourself. It's something that honestly you can step outside with some of the natural events that happen on this great planet, and you can observe it for yourself.
Absolutely.
Peace.
God. Peace, God. Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you. Peace, God. So now that we got the introductions done, I want to dig right into it, God, because Divine, I know your time is precious. We wanted to do this because I think as gods and as scholars and as teachers and as educators and shepherds for the dumb, deaf, and blind throughout the darkness of this world, I think it's important for us to be able to have the understanding and the know-how to dispatch these very basic pseudo arguments at no limit of time, God. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to pull up one of the things that was being said on the podcast, because I know everybody may not have seen it, but I just want to play a quick clip, and then Divine, we could go into some of the science behind that, God, and then I'll let you add on first, and then if the God want to add on, we'll rock and roll, okay? So I'm gonna put this on your screen so you can see it too, God. Let me play this for y'all real quick. All right, let's play this.
It's something that you put magical properties to. God, let me ask you something. Do you really believe that people are upside down in Australia right now? And that because of gravity, it rains upward. It rains upward. Because every ball has to have a top and a bottom, correct?
We're not
There
talking
has to be a top and a bottom to the ball. And what y'all are saying on a ball earth, that people can exist on the side of the ball, on the bottom of the ball. It's ridiculous, God. It's ridiculous.
You don't understand because you don't understand basic physics. So can you? So let me ask
Here you go.
All right, let me stop that. So, God, to that point, right? If you can, because we're obviously dealing with gravity, we're obviously dealing with basic science. How do you answer that, God? How do you we're all living on a big spinning ball. How do you be on top of the ball and the bottom of the ball and people walk on the side of it? So God, how would you add on to that, God, if you can?
All right. Well, first of all, let's look at what this force is that we're talking about. And before I even speak on that, I want to speak on today's supreme mathematics, knowledge that you have in order for people to see and understand a process and duplicate that process themselves.
Peace, God.
Right?
I like that.
Word. So going into that, if we were just to go based on, well, look at that. Doesn't that look ridiculous? You're looking at a demonstration of somebody holding up somebody's toy ball, force to begin with.
Ooh.
But we've had metallic balls at our nation show and prove in the Duke University. And what these balls do is they generate an electrostatic charge. And that electrostatic charge is similar to the force that exhibits is similar to gravitational force. Instead of gravitation is just electrical fields. And you can take things like cotton balls and pieces of original people's hair that are kinky, that's easy to electrostatically charge, and you can make those become attracted to that ball, and you can see them sticking up under the ball, to the side of the ball, on the top of the ball. Um, so the issue is not, is it ridiculous because it's an inert basketball. The issue is looking at the respective size, because the planet Earth is the diameter, God-born wisdom equality, is almost 8,000 miles. It's not just a few feet like a basketball. It's millions of times bigger than that, for one. Because of that, in the relative force of gravity, and gravity is even weaker than electrostatic field. And just by doing that experiment with the electrostatic generator, which is only so big, you can see small objects sticking to it. So expand that to the planet Earth that has a much larger mass, and equate the principle of mass with charge, then you can see things sticking to it that also have mass.
Peace, God.
All right.
Peace, God. No. I was just acknowledging what you were saying. I wasn't trying to cut your wisdom.
Oh, okay. Word. So the notion that, doesn't that sound ridiculous? Yeah, if you're looking at the scale of physical phenomenon in the comparison of their sizes, um, then you'll see how this is reality. Lord Jamar act like he's not an entertainer and he's never taken flights anywhere, to any place on the globe, overseas or whatnot. For you to get into an airplane, first of all, you get in, you fly up, and outside the pressure is reduced because gravitation falls off the further away you get from the center of the planet. Center of the planet, being that there's a center, that means it's a globe, it's round, and that's just a few thousand feet, a few miles above the Earth's surface. So the fact that he's on a plane, uh, air pressure and temperature as you go up in elevation is a result of the planet being round, and losing atmosphere as you go further out, because uh, the gravitational pull is reduced by the inverse square of distance from the center of the planet. He's ignoring all of that. So, uh, there's some other examples we can get into in terms of the realities of gravity. Think about weather that we've recently had over the last few years or millennia. If you look at the equator, that's approximately 25,000 miles in circumference, then once they travel down in that direction, because of the rotation of our planet, the winds start to veer to the east, the same direction of rotation, which causes a counterclockwise motion for hurricanes that originate in the north hemisphere and travel south. And it's the opposite direction when they originate in the southern hemisphere and they travel north. And every hurricane does this. Tornadoes to an extent do this for the most part. There are some exceptions when there's various gradients for depression or where a tornado
And peace, God. Not to cut your wisdom.
Where hurricanes definitely do this.
Peace, God.
Okay.
Is that what they call the Coriolis effect?
Yes, that's the Coriolis effect, or it's called the Coriolis effect. But basically, it's the conservation of angular momentum and angular energy, and you only conserving angular motion if you're on a rotating surface, rotating sphere.
Peace, God. Right. And like you said, the only way that you can create these rotating positions is on a rotating sphere, God. Definitely, man. So I'm gonna play another clip of this what we call the Lord Jamar madness. We could throw another one of these clips up real quick so we can keep the build going on this dialogue, man. Let me get this one up real quick.
All they're doing is getting in the way.
That's the one where I got that one too, God. When he said, all they doing is getting in the way. Get them out of here.
He projecting. He talking about himself. That's all that is.
Man. What's that? What we can use with our mind. Yeah. This is a good one. I want to add this one on. Let's get this clip up here. With things like Kepler's law 1, 2, and 3, we can prove and make predictions on the ellipses that all planets travel, including the Earth. Yet people call it an assumption, but what we know is, based off of what we've done with the hundreds of thousands of satellites that's orbiting around space that use GPS.
Where are they? There's a picture of them.
You can see them with a telescope.
No, you can't.
Yes, you can. Just like you can see all the rest of the planets that's in the solar system. With the telescope.
No, you ain't never even looked in the telescope. If you looked in the telescope, you know
well, Jamal, you're wrong. I have a telescope. I have a personal telescope.
Oh yeah?
Yes. What's getting said because there's so much yelling and back and forth. So, my question to you is, God, based off of that, what do you say about the science? If you can you add on about Kepler's first and second and third law, and how that adds to the validity of a system of a round planet traveling on elliptices, God? Can you add on? Would you add on to that point? That's what we were striving to get to, and what I was going to is that using those elliptical paths, we can then in turn make predictions, which we know to be right and exact down to the hour, to the minute, to the second, to where if a person would say, hey, at this time, the Earth is going to be in this particular trajectory with this particular planet to where we can see this phenomenon at this second. God, can you add on about that science really quick, God, if you can?
Sure. So, just a very simple point, most of us have cell phones or some type of cell phone technology. And that technology is enabled by satellites that are either in geosynchronous orbit or in orbits that are give them periods, either half of a day or a full day or twice a day, in order to be stable enough to enable GPS. Most people that navigate, or most people that have a phone that use Uber, those are enabled by satellites. So that's the reality of so-called quote unquote Kepler's laws. Kepler's laws are just simplifications of the approximation for standard classical gravity. And I say classical gravity as opposed to general relativistic gravity because that will get into some extra things in terms of like why do some orbits rotate over time, like the orbit of Mercury spins over time, for instance. But we're just going to deal with classical gravity. Classical gravity is similar to the electric force. Basically, you have a force relative to the inverse square distance from the center of whatever object that has a mass, which is similar to the inverse square from a distance of an object that has a charge for the electric force, right? And from that simple arrangement, you can derive Kepler's so-called laws. Kepler's laws state that, for one, the object that does travel along around a massive body, um, the tracing of that body is such that the connection between focal points of an ellipse will trace that object, so that those focal points on the string always add up to be the same. The simplest ellipse is a circle. In that circle, if you have a loop of string that extends from the center of that circle all the way up and back down again, and you trace that loop all the way around, that's ellipse of eccentricity of 0. As you increase eccentricity, you increase the different distance of focal length. So if I have 2 pegs here and I put a loop around it, then it's going to trace something that's not quite circular. It's going to be oblong. But that will also describe an orbit of this object that doesn't have any other external forces on it besides the gravitational force between itself and that massive object in the center at one of those focal points. So that's the first law. The second law describes that the period of travel that it takes for an object in orbit to move from one segment to another will always sweep out equal areas. So say our circle here, if we're in our circle and I sweep out an area that's quarter of a circle, and we'll say that's a year, that's going to last 3 months, then that same area of circle will also be swept out down here. That's another 3 months. Now, if I start to, elongate this circle into ellipse, then all those little corners of that ellipse that sweep out of orbit that have the same area are going to have the same period. So, whatever's these sweep out a month or 10 days or whatever, they're always going to have the same area. And that's going to show you the relative speed of that object while it's in orbit.
Peace, God.
But it will always equal out.
Peace, God. I like that, God. Empowered. I know you've been sitting over here doing the knowledge, God. Anything you want to add on to where we at, really, in that?
Other than the God is right now. Sometimes the truth don't need no cheerleader.
Absolutely.
When someone is speaking it, sometimes the best thing to do is just listen. And
right.
If it's something else to be added on, but the God has done a great job of speaking the truth to power, and he's very succinct with what we dealing with. Today's the Wisdom Knowledge Day, so when a wise man is speaking, sometimes the best thing to do is just listen.
Dude, I'm telling you, God, I like that. Gotta give you a drop the horn on that. So, God, I got one more video that I do want to tag you on to. Let me bring this up.
All right.
It's another point that we want to deal with.
I will like to touch on the lunar eclipse.
Okay.
At one particular time, but after this. But I'm just saying that's something that we could throw out there that helps show and prove.
Absolutely.
That the Earth isn't flat.
Absolutely, God. Let's roll the tape.
You're talking about a life, it doesn't matter. You're saying that they're on the outside of this mass, right? And that.
Okay, we went through that one. Let's get the other one. So the one I want to pull up, God, was when we were talking about, density and buoyancy, God. Okay, I brought up the point about gravity. Okay, and the point that all objects accelerate to the ground at a speed which we can show and prove, right? When you deal with Newton's universal law of gravitation. So the response I was given was that And then what we found is, even through our research, this is something that all the flat earthers say. Every flat earther out there, they all say the same thing when we talk about gravity. They say that density is what causes an object to fall to the ground. Okay? And my response, I was yelled over. I said, density isn't a force. So, God, what exactly is a force? We know that gravity is a force, but why? What do you say about density? Someone who says objects are falling to the ground, or objects accelerate because of density and buoyancy.
All right. So, a force essentially is uh, the energy that's needed to accelerate something. Accelerate means to increase or decrease speed or velocity, right? So the notion of what is it, density being a force, which is an interpretation of buoyancy being a force. Uh, there's some truth to buoyancy being a force, but it's all relative to gravity and displacement and force in general. So they're talking about everything falls down because heavy, right? But have they ever done the experiments where they evacuated a tube and put a feather and a rock in the same tube and let them fall, and they both hit the ground at the same time from the same height? That you can't explain that with buoyancy. Um, that's something more fundamental than buoyancy, because there's a near vacuum in each tube, and there's nothing getting in the way. Typically, a feather falls um, slower than a solid rock because it is meeting resistance, air resistance. But if you put both of those objects in vacuum tubes and let them fall, they're going to accelerate at the same rate near the surface of our planet. So that defeats the whole notion of this gravity is just this buoyancy force everywhere on the surface of the planet. Um, and we can probably post a link up later that demonstrates that experiment that most people have done in high school, let alone in college, have done that experiment with somebody. Uh, the buoyancy and displacement of an object that's lighter than the fluid that is in uh, has more to do with how can I say this? Uh, it has more to do with this notion of statistical physics and rearranging objects that have a force that's negligible in comparison to gravity, so that they have an optimum um, displacement of substance. That's where the so-called force of buoyancy comes in. Uh, so when certain oils start to levitate out of water because they're lighter than than the actual water that's in there, they're less dense than the water. It's water that's falling around those oils, falling around the oil, and then that oil rises up. So this buoyancy force is sort of like an illusion, so to speak, because there's a fluid there that's flowing around these objects, and as that fluid goes down and underneath, it displaces that oil and pushes it to the top. You don't see that happening with anything in our atmosphere that's more solid than organisms, living organisms, unless you consider birds, right? Birds take advantage of something that's like buoyancy when they fly over thermals, and that those thermal um, currents elevate the birds as they're spreading their wings, different falcons and that sort of thing. But that's all I'm going to say on that.
Peace, God. Peace, God.
Peace.
Thank you, God. So, really quick, I do got another question for you. Another advanced little math question. I seen somebody in the comments. You know, the thing is with y'all with the flat Earth people, man. You know, is that everything is a conspiracy. Everything is, everything's a lie. Everything's fake. So somebody said in the comments, hey, if you have one real image taken on the Apollo 8 spacecraft, December 24th in 1968, of the Earth from space, people say, oh, that's fake. It's photoshopped. They didn't have the technology to do Photoshop in 1968 to edit photos, as well as the digital photos. So, sorry, we can't take that one, buddy. So here's a photo for you. And most recently, what I've been dealing with is the Virgin Galactic live streamed space flight, where the Virgin Galactic company, the private sector, not NASA, not the the government or the conspiracy like they want to say, but a private company had a manned space flight where they live streamed the whole thing. So just that was just to that point. God, you said you wanted to go add on about the science of a solar eclipse. God, come on up.
Correction, the lunar eclipse.
The lunar eclipse, please.
Which
God.
is when the Earth passes between the sun and the moon, and there is a shadow that is cast onto the moon from the Earth. And to replicate this, we could just use a basketball or a tennis ball. You could hold a flashlight up of it in front of it along the wall, and the image that you would get to the moon. And what that means is, because a lot of times the flat earthers, they have that snow globe type of effect, that the earth is flat and that there's a dome. Well, if that's the case, then when the sun would shine onto the earth, there wouldn't be a shadow of a circle onto the moon. And this is something that is because of geometry. It also shows that because of the density of the materials that exist onto the planet, that they are not just settled, if you would, at the bottom, and at the top is just air and it's just fluff. Because otherwise, how would the shadow be cast if there wasn't something there that could block the light at that particular moment? So that's something that has been observed since ancient times, going back to prior to Greece, but is most noted in the Greek culture, and I think that that's important, because for a lot of things, we know that they originated in, out of the Africa, or the mother continent. And with that being something, when we know that the Greeks studied among those ancient Kemet, this was something that they observed at home, and in communication with those from Kemet about certain astronomical phenomenon, the stars that they weren't able to see, when they communicated with those from further north in the Nordic areas. There were stars that they couldn't see. There were certain things that were unobserved in Greece that were observed elsewhere. So with this lunar eclipse, that was something that, and this is something that even still today that we can still see. And if someone doesn't see the lunar eclipse, you can hold up a ball in front of a flashlight and look at the shadow that's cast onto the wall, and that what that pretty much is showing is that same shadow that was cast onto the moon from the earth is done by a ball. And that's something that the spherical shape that the earth has is similar to that of the ball. So I want continue to go
right. See, not only can people see that, they can predict it.
Exactly.
Which means they prediction is a hallmark of those that are wise, that have done the knowledge to how things operate, and can determine where an object is going to be and what kind of shadow it is going to cast and in what direction over time.
And like you said, God, those predictions, what people have to understand is how science works is when you're able to provide a prediction using your science and using your mathematics, this is how we know and show it forth to be true, because it worked time and time again. I have yet to see anyone with that deal with the science of a flat earth who think that's what it is, use their model and their scale to make a accurate prediction of anything that's going to happen in the solar system. They don't have a model. They don't have a scale. You know what I mean? So that lead me to the one of the next pieces, God, that I wanted to have get your C on, and that was, one of the pieces, God, was, okay, what is the formula for the curvature of the earth? How do we show and prove that there is a curve and that the earth curves? So I wanted to see, one, if you were familiar with this equation. The equation, let me see. Are you able to see? Can you see the equation I got up, God?
There's a time delay between when I can see the video. Okay, I see it now.
Okay,
I see it now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I want to deal with can you give us some insight on this equation? I know that this is a little bit of trigonometry, but I know that this is what you have to deal with when you're dealing with the curvature of the earth. So I want to see if you could add on to this science, God.
All right. Essentially, what you can do, you can take any circle and you can divide it up into smaller equilateral triangles. So, I take this kind of sign and I sweep it around, all the way around into a circle. So I can take a thin enough equilateral triangle that has equal length to its vertex, but its side will have a smaller length. And typically in trigonometry, this opposite side of a triangle is proportionate to the cosine of the angle that's between these two lines. So when you see this equation here for this height is equal to r minus r being the radius. R is my two fingers here. Those are the two radiuses. This angle between these two lines is in what's called radians. It's not just degrees, it's radians. In radians, you can approximate as sort of this ratio of how far apart your two indices are divided by the radius, which is why they have this arc length divided by 2r, because 2r would be the total let me make sure I'm saying this right. 2r.
That's the diameter, right?
I'm not sure why they have 2r. Oh, okay, I know why, because radian is 2 pi r. Okay, right. That's why they have 2r. So this S arc length, which is how far of a distance you're walking from here to here, will be proportional to how far this drops off as you're walking around, right? So that angle in radians, say we have 360 degrees. In radians, that's 2 times pi, so that's approximately 6.28. There's 6.28 radians in a circle, or there's 360 degrees in a circle. The distances that they usually talk about here that are for S are, you're walking a few feet or a few hundred feet out of the 8,000 miles divided by 2, or the 4,000 miles radius of our planet. So that ratio is going to be much smaller. It's on orders of thousands or millions. And so that height difference, proportionally speaking, is going to be much less. So you're not going to notice much height difference at all unless you go super far down the road, and then you'll say, oh, okay, now I can't see that thing that I can see anymore. The principle of you driving into a city, in the plains area, like you're driving into dang St. Louis, right? And you're far enough from St. Louis where you can't see the arc, right? But once you get to a certain distance, you start to see the top of the arc. And then once you drive in further, you start to see the full arc. This is the same principle. So you can do that with any city that's in the plain.
And we see this phenomenon too when we deal with boats. Which
right.
If you have any flat earther, they never like to keep the camera, on the boat the whole time. Right. Because the boat dips below the horizon, and
right.
It's you see now. What we know is that if the Earth was flat, then you would just see this boat get smaller and never lose proportion.
Right.
Versus it dipping below the horizon. Yep. Right. To Chris Creek on YouTube, man, you said that the formula is actually 8 inches per mile squared. Can you derive that? Can you show us how that actually works? Because I've never seen a flat earther do it. So if you got that formula, man, please put it in the comments, buddy. Right. It's so funny, man. I reached out to old Professor Dave, man. They hate Professor Dave on YouTube, but he made a video 10 things all flat earthers say, man, and that was one of them. And that
there's one thing that I did observe in that video.
Go ahead.
That I wanted to also debunk. This notion that if we're on a spinning globe, then why are we flying off? Why don't we notice? So it's the same principle here. Lord Jamar, he's trying to get you caught up in the centripetal force from the planet's rotation. If we take the extreme case, if we're sitting on the equator that's traveling at 1,037 miles per hour, which is just you dividing the circumference to 24,896 miles divided by 24 hours. That's how you get that figure. Approximately 1,000 miles per hour. But that only works out to, a tenth of a mile per second. But centripetal force is this velocity squared or speed squared over radius, distance to the center of your spin. So at the Earth's equator, that radius R is approximately 4,000 miles. The speed is like 0.2 of a mile per second, or like 1,000 feet per second, something like that. But when you work out that calculation, 1,000 times 1,000 or 1,000,000, but divide by the circumference in feet, or rather the radius in feet, you're going to get a figure that's 0.11 feet per second squared. And that figure is compared to the actual pull of gravity at the surface, which is 32 feet per second squared. So it's like taking a dime and comparing it to $32.
Peace, God.
That's how far of a factor that centripetal force will affect whatever you feel in terms of any force. And at the surface of our planet, gravity is much stronger than that centripetal force. And as you go toward the poles of our planet, then that will just fall off anyway, because that speed will reduce, and also the radius. That the whole figure will dissipate, basically, the closer you get to any poles. So, there's that to consider. There's so many things to consider in this notion. Think of magnetism. Magnetism isn't just an electrostatic force, it's charges that move, that rotate.
Yes.
So, we have magnetic compasses for a reason. Of course, that those poles change over time as the molten metal in our planet changes its distribution, but they're always going to go in those directions of the poles, near the North and South Pole. They won't be right on top of it, but they will be near it. So that points to a magnetic moment of an object that is spinning, um, and that implies circular. It doesn't imply something that's flat.
True indeed. True indeed.
Right.
I love it. I love it. No, and I just want to address this comment really quick. Chris Creek said, he says, look it up. You're cognitive dissonances while you're unable to wake up. I know it's hard to know everything they have taught you was lies. So listen, but no, God. Listen, God, I want to make the same point because I think this is a really good point in my opinion that, these people are really borderline out their mind, God. If you believe that, this we will be talking about the largest, most unconceivable conspiracy theory in history. Like, it would take an unprecedented amount of dedication, of unison, meaning that we're taught that would mean every scientist, every mathematician, every physicist, every geologist, every person who studies the center of the earth, every astrophysicist, every astro engineer, every navigator, every pilot, every flight attendant, every air traffic controller, all of these people who use these formulas and these equations that we've been talking about tonight, all of these people are liars. And there's not a single whistleblower among the scientific community, the majority of the scientific community, that create their own curriculum. That every countries like Jamaica, the Philippines, little small countries who have their own space program, that the 20 or 30 separate space agencies are all liars, even in the private sector. And like he said, they teach you the ball to hide the creator. They trying to hide the truth of the creator on the round planet.
Who is self-creating?
Right. Like what do the so-called powers that be benefit from hiding something that changes absolutely nothing? It's really asinine, God. It's so basic.
You also have to consider that, sometimes people put these flights of fantasies just to do information gathering, to see who's actually going to fall for debate and who's going to spend the processing power to debunk a lot of this, as opposed to using that processing power to do constructive things. I'm not saying, this discussion is not constructive, but over time, you start to lose efficiency the more you go over.
Absolutely.
With certain people.
I think we have a responsibility, not to cut you off, God, that when somebody is lying, we got to kick it and crush it with the truth. And if they're saying that we lying, then that means that the burden of proof is on the one who is saying that there is a lie. Because one thing that has been shown, as far as through your dialogue, as far as through a lot of the information that's out there, is fact. So for this particular person, Chris Creek, I don't know if it's Dawson's Creek or what type of creek it is, but at the same time, a creek is something that is connected to a river, a lake, that you should be able to make some type of connections. You get what I'm saying? So to say that we're incorrect, and then when we ask you to, that's essentially saying show and what? Prove. Not show and tell. So he's telling, or he, she, I'm not sure who, is telling us to go look it up when we're in fact looking to that person. So we don't have to look up. Many of our people have been lied to for trillions of years for searching for that which doesn't exist, and we still have those people who are still in believing in those things that don't exist, and now they want us to look up, while in fact they're down on the ground trying to scrape up and gather all these types of things that really don't equate to any type of truth. And that's why almost all flat earthers have a hard time having a basic debate. You're going to find them getting upset. You're going to find them getting emotional. And as my brother is saying, where's the math at? How can, like, where your facts at?
What they do,
it's not on us. So until you have something to actually contradict what we're saying, STFU.
Well, and I think, God, here's the point. What they do is they use a lot of ad hoc reasoning, as it's called. A lot of red herrings.
Yeah.
You know what we know is that what the scientific method teaches us, God, and Devon, you can attribute to this, is that the what we can accept as good science and sound science is the model that unequivocally solves these scientific problems and natural phenomena in its most simplest form, right? To where the simple observation, the understanding the observation that all of the other planets are round, so this planet is round, and they travel on this ellipsis, and this planet is in a tilted position, explains the phenomena of the planet with beyond a shadow of a doubt. The flat earth community unfortunately has to have a different explanation to explain every single phenomenon on the planet because they don't have a unifying system. Right. Does that make? Would you agree with that, God?
Yeah, I agree with that, and also understand the agenda for a lot of these fallacies that evolve for people to come out and swat and debunk. It is based on this notion of getting market share and visibility in things such as advertising, ratings, that sort of thing. So this discussion could generate a lot of clackety clacks and likes. It's not even parallel to what it is really designed for. It is really designed for, well, this discussion was attached to somebody's name, and the person that had that name is advertising certain products. And the more people keep that person's name in their mouth, the more our products get advertised.
Right.
So, I can do several other off the cuff sort of activities that may be true, false, or whatever, but because they're sensational, they're generating revenue because of advertisements.
Mm-hmm. Yes, God, I like that. I like that 100%, God. And one more point that I was gonna make, and I was making this last night. Nobody had a response for it on any part of the broadcast, and that was that we all see the same face of the moon, God. And in my opinion, this understanding, when I understood this and I grasped, I said, wow, it was just so simple. Because if like Lord Jamar last night, he said that, and I will pull this clip up too if we need to, that the moon and Earth, the moon and the sun were approximately the same size. And
what were the same size?
The sun and the moon, God.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can pull. Y'all gonna make me pull this video up. He said that they were the same size and that they were 30 miles away from the surface of the planet, and that they go up and down to bring in night and day. Right? And
sounds complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated. And my question was, well, why do we all see the same face of the moon? No matter where you stand on the planet, in the northern hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, you will see the same exact face of the moon, regardless to whom or what. So
that can't be if it's only 30 miles away from the surface of the planet.
As well as it cannot be if the Earth is flat, because if it was flat, then we would be all seeing the same night sky. We would all. Someone in Australia will see a different side of the moon versus someone at the top of their flat Earth map, where they got Africa and all this stuff at the top and Alaska in the middle, right? someone standing in this country and on that country will both see a different side of the moon. Like if you take the basic experiment and you have 3 people go stand out in your front yard and have one person stand behind have one person stand in the middle, one person behind them, one person in the rear, right? Those 2 people are going to see, one person is going to see the back of this person in the middle's head, and the other person is going to see the front of his face. Okay? So, we all see the same face of the moon because this is a rotating sphere. It's like, it's just the simple understanding answers the question, clears the problem, because this body is rotating, and because the gravitational pull from this rotating mass is so powerful, it locks the moon in a fixed position so that as the planet turns and rotates and we go from night to day in the northern hemisphere into night and day in the southern hemisphere, you will always see this same front face of the moon, which any person can, regardless of your geographical location. If we go outside and look at the moon right now, we'll see the exact same face. So just simple, God. Just simple, basic reasoning. And to God, another point that I was gonna make. Do you know of any of original cultures who have dealt with this science of the earth being round? That was one thing that came up in the build last night. You got any point you want to make to that?
So as of now, usually the benchmark here is something like the Nile Valley or some societies associated with that in time, like anything from the Naphtha where there's some of the first so-called astronauts.
Where the planets are.
Most of them did not make an explicit declaration that the planet Earth was round, as far as I can tell. They just made a distinction between phases of matter or states of matter, solid, liquid, and gas. So, I'll have to do more research to see. But as far as I can tell, most people in antiquity try to not make that distinction besides observing other planets and saying, well, that's round, or that's like a star, or that's like the moon. But this planet, finding an explicit declaration that, we live on a round globe, I haven't seen that declaration anywhere in any language.
So, and now, God, really quick, do you anything that you would say to someone who says that because we just got it in the comments that the Earth, he said the sun and the moon, they fluctuate at 30 miles in height above the surface. Is this from a physics perspective? Why is this impossible, God? Please.
I mean, physically, it's not possible because they're saying that something that's 30 miles away has a unidirectional force that spreads out for thousands of miles. And we don't have any example of anything like that on the planet Earth that is so small but has a unidirectional force that only points one direction.
Right.
It is usually more toward the center of that object. It's not spread out, pointing with equal strength over thousands of miles. That just doesn't work.
Not to mention what we know to be 100% fact, that the sun is at all times illuminating and playing a gravitational influence on the other planets in the solar system,
right?
Including Mercury and Venus. I mean, so where do all of those planets play a role? I mean, it's just so many basic questions, man. And these people read from these same talking points, man, like they read from a manifesto, but have yet to produce any physical evidence or physical proof of anything that they talk about or any point.
I'd be very interested in the comedy resulting in one of them trying to explain how tides originate and why tides only occur a certain time of the month over in certain directions on the planet.
Absolutely, God. Well, that was one of my questions last night as well. You know, as to why, you know, because they love these little they have these little images of like how they view the planet, and how the all of the how they prove goodness, man, the whole thing where they say that the moon it's like a whole little breakdown.
It's like a dome.
A dome, and the balls are spinning around at the top or whatever. And even my question, even I asked them, I said, yo, would this being the case, because they'll have the sun and the moon going around in these crazy circles, and the sun is changing speeds, and it's changing height, and it's changing positions. How do you account for, you have places like Point Barrow, Alaska, getting darkness the majority of the year? You know, how does it you account for the light illuminating all these places without not illuminating this one spot? You know what I mean? Like, light doesn't work like that. Light doesn't dissipate in that fashion. What you about to say, God?
All I was gonna say is, based on what they saying, somebody will be able to literally jump off the planet.
Absolutely.
And it hasn't happened. It's not gonna happen.
Oh well, you know, nobody has lived to tell that. Oh, I dropped off the planet, because once you do that, you're in outer space and dead, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely,
Excuses.
absolutely. You know, even to the point, one of their other favorite talking points is that water doesn't curve, and that water isn't unable to be acted on by a force. You know, that was something else that was brought up in the point. Absolutely, God, absolutely. I said the same thing.
So you can't pour water out of a cup onto the surface of the planet because of gravitational force? I don't understand that.
Yeah, man, we don't understand that science. Bing bong, man. Yeah, so man, God, thank you so much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure, God, listening to you destroy these weak arguments and things, man, that have no basics in science and mathematics, man. You know, and for anybody that's tuning in and that may be watching, you know, what we said, we dealing with this from the point that we gods, okay? The gods of the universe and the supreme beings, we not the ones who stray away from understanding, who stray away from science, who stray away from showing and proving and dealing with the sciences of the world. You know what I mean? We don't mind producing and coming with some of the basics of physics, the basics of math. You know, we scholars.
Atomic structure.
Absolutely, God, absolutely. And I think that, like the God said, it's imperative that when we see lies, when we see falsehood, when we see things that have fault and that try to attack the world of science and understanding and knowledge, that we be present to combat the ignorance, man. Because if not, the children will be miseducated, the people will be miseducated, and you know, we want like the guy was there saying, when we see falsehood, we gotta knock his brains out. You know what I'm saying? Oh my, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he did kept saying that. I don't know the answer to all of that. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know
that, or you're only choosing the information that's going to invalidate my point.
Oh, absolutely, man. So,
yeah, because your point is invalidated.
Yeah,
that's what the information shows.
Absolutely, God. And here's one that I did want to share. The brother dropped this one last night. I thought this was a really good piece, man. I thought that was pretty dope. It was just I don't know if you can see this image. This is an image from ancient Sumer. That in the Sumerian text, and this is a piece of a statue that is, you know, you can go see in museums and dictating the history of the people of Sumer, and they used a model of the universe in which we know now, man. So this is very old. You know, I want to see and I'm with fam. If someone has the evidence of a culture, of original people that dealt with the flat earth, bring it forth. Let us examine it. Let's go through it. Let's build on it. You know what I mean? Because I know we know And even like you said, we know that we do have the history of the original people dealing with force, dealing with how they understood math and how they understood these things. So, we you know, and also, man, we want to help the gods and the earths out there.
I want to make an observation about that image.
Go ahead,
I'd be
come on.
very careful of saying that the specific mappings that you have there correspond to what that image actually represents.
Word.
So there might need to be some more cultural digging and language digging to see what that image actually means.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I don't know most ancient people talking about Neptune or Uranus, because those were just too dim for most people to notice back then. They would notice something brighter, like Jupiter or Saturn. But Neptune or Uranus, not so much. So
Yeah,
we'll probably have to,
I can see that.
do more research on that image later to see what that actually corresponds
Absolutely,
to.
God. And I want to do want to drop one more, go through one more clip, man, before we get up out of here. Come on, God.
I got
You wanna say
one quick question from my brother Divine Rule Equality. With today's supreme alphabet being you a universe, essentially with this flat Earth hypothesis, would you agree that that would negate the structure of the atom?
So think about this: the atom, how it's typically depicted, which is a nucleus that has either combinations of protons and neutrons, and then electrons, quote unquote, orbiting that.
Right.
The Bohr model of the atom is a very simplified view of atom.
Right.
And actually, you know, the electrons aren't just going in circular orbits around protons and neutrons. It's slightly more. It's not as circular as that. I'll put it to you. It's like a scattering of that electron in different positions. If you consider quantum mechanics. So this whole notion of you have a point in electrons going around like that, that's too simplified of a view. It's more of the electron is bum, 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 bum. But that those protons or the neutrons are still remain the quote unquote center of that atom, center of mass, so to speak. Right?
Right.
And so you won't have the electron in the center and the proton doing all this. It's always going to be the proton / neutron here, and the electron in a quantum distribution around that point.
Exactly. And I would just say that my point in asking that question is that with the whole dome or half globe that they purport as being truth, that with what you've just described, that pretty much is impossible.
It doesn't make sense because there's no correspondence to that in terms of correspondence that you have on a large scale and a small scale and a medium scale. Because we know on a large scale, you're going to have structure, and that structure is based on larger objects that serve as anchors for that structure. The same way that a man's supposed to serve as an anchor and a focal point for the family in order to build off of, and in the same point where that nucleus is supposed to be the anchor for that atom in terms of how that evolves and has relationships with other atoms via the electric fields.
Peace.
So go ahead.
One quick point to that, and this was something that I brought up last night, because they like to say that water doesn't curve, God. So I showed them this image, right? They say water doesn't curve. And my point with this, and when we understand water, just in that same science that we deal with, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that water has hydrogen bonds, right? Which effectively are cohesive forces, okay? And what these cohesive forces do, what happens in that hydrogen bond is that the molecular structure essentially takes the shape that uses the least amount of energy, right? That uses the least amount of friction. If I'll be correct in this term, this would be an
Yeah,
electromagnetic
the
force.
bonds would be called ionic
Peace, God.
as opposed to covalent.
Covalent.
Ionic because they're somewhat weaker, based on the weaker electrostatic um, potential as opposed to covalent that you would find in organic material, which is more ties of multiple electrons with each other, as opposed to uh, a singular charge between weak ionic bonds between uh, molecules.
Mm.
But yeah, those the arrangements there will try to assemble um, the least corresponding energy. You're correct about that.
And which gives us this spherical shape. So essentially just
Right.
that. So I just wanted to add that on, God. That was the first thing that came to mind. And yeah, man. And my man's in the comments is steady saying, "Give us a real picture of the globe." We've showed you one. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pictures from the space station, from the many space flights from many countries. But yet y'all all say that they're all fake. Even though I've never seen one fake picture of the flat Earth, of what the flat Earth
one
looks
real
like.
picture.
I haven't seen one real picture.
Of the flat Earth.
I haven't seen any picture that's not a CGI rendering.
Right.
Like we got planes, we got helicopters. Y'all like to show pictures of the horizon and stuff like that. But yeah, man. But yeah, God. So
The burden of proof is on them.
the burden of proof is definitely on them, God. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is the God and Earth Hour podcast, and we getting in a little bit over an hour, man. So God, Divine Ruler, man, it's been an absolute pleasure, God, having you on here, man, and kind of to go through some of this science, man. I really enjoyed it. Let's go through some final remarks, man. I see you want come onto the stage and drop something too.
Tell everybody to say peace.
Word. God, any final statements, Divine, you want to add on, God, before we get up out of here to everybody that's checking out?
Yeah, peace. I just want to make sure that we're all mindful of the mental and physical exertion that we exhibit when we go out and demonstrate and teach the people, and that we use um, the principles of good organization in defense of knowledge and wisdom, and applying that so that people can see what it is that we're trying to promote. We're trying to promote better lives. You can't do that if you're ignorant or don't have any awareness of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Those things that serve as the sprouts um, that will grow in order to give us a more sustainable environment for living. So we need to keep planting seeds and encouraging sciences as opposed to stifling. Peace.
Peace, God. Peace, God.
Peace.
I love that. My man. Empower. Anything you want to lead the people with, man?
Absolutely. Learning is fun. Learning, it is. Nowadays, it's so easy to spread opinion that when people speak facts, a lot of times people will get offended. And when the truth is being spoken, a lot of times the truth can stand on its own. It doesn't have to be upset, but yet so many people will get upset with the truth. So at times of debating, times of disagreements, if you know that you know the truth and you have the truth, calm yourself, speak that truth, and show and prove it. Because the truth will reign supreme, and those who are telling a lie or stories or whatever, they will crack over time. And I think that the way my brother Minister Freedom conducted himself is very important and is a lesson for us all, because sometimes we can be emotionally involved. Being happy is an emotion, also being upset is an emotion. But when we speak from a place of being emotionally driven, sometimes we will lose our seat in truth. And when the guy was calm and he dealt with the truth from a righteous perspective, it seemed like so many people that weren't dealing with the truth. It's like the old saying, if two people are arguing from afar, you really can't tell which person is telling the truth. And I think that we have to keep those types of things in mind and be mindful and just speak the truth and be calm and stand on your square. Peace.
Peace, God.
Peace.
Peace to the God. I love that, man. So, yes, y'all, man. Yo, Chris, to all the people in the comments, man, make sure y'all show some love, show some support, man, to the channel. If you want to support us, man, you can check us out at the 5% Connection.live/tips, man. We also got merchandise. The merch store is live on Facebook and on Instagram, man. Just click the link in the bio, man, and we can click into it, man. Listen, it's our goal to bring the conversation of knowledge and wisdom and understanding right to the minds of the people that's looking for it. If you out there, man, and you interested in the teachers of the 5%ers, man, and you want to get connected to the gods and the earth, regardless of your geographical location, make sure that you hit the link in our bio, and we'll get you connected, man. It's going to take you to a page. Drop your name, your phone number, your email address, man, and we'll connect you right in person with the gods and the earth, man, regardless to where you at, man. So that's what our goal here is, man, to steady dig into intellectual topics, bring the gods and earth together, man, and show forth and prove that Allah is God, man. Always has been.
Always will be.
So
actual facts.
So
we can show and prove it.
Yes, we can.
With actual facts.
Yes, we
not
can.
Pictures. We can go outside. You can look at these types of stuff. This is, I mean, seriously, because this is what we have to deal with in this reality, because so many people will sit at their computer.
Yeah.
Will sit on their cell phone. They won't ever look outside. And the root of science is scientio, scientia, which means to know. So if you cannot get somebody else to see it, then we can't even be it to bring it into existence.
No, peace, God. I like that.
And I would say that in so many things where it can get complex, we was taught to keep it simple and teach it real. So if you can't break it down into its most smallest form, then 9 times out of 10, either 1, you really don't know it, 2, you can't show it, and 3, we not gonna believe it. Because when you believe, you can be lied to. That's the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th letter. And some of these types of things may seem cliche to some people, but at the same time, it's very simple. And we are complex beings, but yet we are simplified at the same time. And that's what mathematics and living mathematics does. It's the winter solstice. So this is one of the time periods where the nights is very long, but at the same time we show and prove that the sun always shines. 365.25.
Peace, God.
Peace.
Peace, God. So yeah, divine God, it's been an absolute pleasure, God, having you on here.
Thank you for having me for this discussion. The fact that we have a winter solstice in this hemisphere and the summer solstice in the other one is also proof that the planet is round.
That's right.
So think about that.
Yes, sir.
Peace, God. So let's get on up out of here, man. Devon, you can if you can hang around a little bit after the live stream ends. Man, to everybody that's out there, man, peace and love. Thank you. Peace to everybody in the universe, man. To all the positive people, like my man RC always tell us, man. Peace to all the positive people in the universe. And we're gonna see y'all on Friday. We coming back with the usual science, man. We ain't dealing with no more flat earth. We done showed and proved this, man. It's been
flatlined on the flat earth.
It's been debunked 100 times over, man. Yo, peace to everybody, man. Peace to everybody that's tuning in. And we up out of here, man. Peace.
Our earth got curves, hills and mountains.
That's the other good point. Our earth is round, man. we cool on the flat up and down.
Right.
Oh, you saying that's an excuse?
Yeah,
for somebody that wants the
origination of it.